Alright, I got another video for you. This time I'm going to be covering my PS2 Model 25-286. Now, the last time I showed you the other PS2, which is the 8086 model, this one is a little bit more rare, but it has a lot more capability if you could find one. Mainly because this one, for one, has a 286 processor running at 10 megahertz versus the 8086 running at 8 megahertz. It also has onboard memory expansion capability up to 4 megabytes, as well as VGA video. The VGA video is pretty good feature. It gives you a lot more capability for running software than this model with the MCGA graphics. I'll start out with the basic stuff on the front. Now, how can you tell if yours is the 286 model? Well, if you look up here at the top left hand of the screen, it says specifically Personal System 2, Model 25-286. I'm not sure if they made any of these with monochrome monitors. There's not the colored dots like there are on the Model 25 with MCGA color graphics, but I can tell you that this is definitely a color monitor version. Also, if you look down at the part number, this is an 8525006. It also comes with a 1.44 meg floppy drive. Now here's the hard drive overlay bezel thingy. It's got the vents there for keeping the hard drive cool, as well as the lock for the keyboard and case intrusion. If yours didn't come with a set of keys, you're going to have to come up with some way to break this thing open. I believe there's another video on YouTube where a guy demonstrates cracking one of these open with a crowbar or something. Luckily mine came with keys. I also disabled my key lock. It's got a jumper that goes to the motherboard, and if you pull the jumper off of the motherboard, it just won't work anymore, which is fine. I don't need to prevent anyone from typing on my computer. Back in the 90s, when you were running one of these things, you could have locked your keyboard before you left work to keep anybody from checking out your files or whatever. I'm going to reposition the camera so that I could show you guys the inside of this thing. Just, let's see. Now, just like I did my other PS2, I flipped this thing up onto its monitor, and I've removed these two screws, this one right here, and this one right here, so that I could open the case in what I call service mode. Just gonna grab the bottom, lift, and pull it right out. Now, let's have a look at the motherboard. This is a little different than the one in the 8086 model. It's a more modern motherboard. This unit was released in 1991. I think the 8086 model came out in the mid-80s, I believe. Now, if you look around the board, we'll see what we have here. There is the VLSI chipset. Right here, you have 4 SIM slots. You can expand this memory up to 4 megabytes. The usual configuration is 1 megabyte. I've heard of some of these having less than that, but mostly they'll have 1 megabyte. You don't really need to do a 4 megabyte RAM expansion. I did one on this because eventually when something pops up, I want to do one of the 486 upgrade processors that they made for these. Because this is socketed, a couple companies made 486 and 386, what they called SX upgrades. There's one called the Make It 486 and another one called the SX Now. They very rarely pop up on eBay. I've been trying to get one for a couple years now with no success. And that's actually why I got the 4 megabyte RAM expansion, because if I get a 486 or 386 microprocessor expansion, it will be nice to have a little bit more memory to run some of the software that requires that sort of a processor. The reason why you don't need to go to 4 megabytes of RAM is because there isn't very much software that requires a 286 processor and more than 1 megabyte of memory. This is pretty handy if you plan on running Windows 3.1 on your unit. I actually am running Windows 3.1 on this. I'll boot it up after I get done showing you all the hardware. Now let me focus over here. Now, whereas the 8086 model had 8-bit ISA slots, the 286 model has 2 16-bit ISA slots. This one right here I currently have occupied with the Sound Blaster card. If you want to have a look at the model that I have. It's a Sound Blaster 16 model CT1740. This one will definitely work in your PS2 if you have a look on eBay for one of these. I actually lucked out, and this was in a non-functional 486 that I got from a thrift store for like $6. So anyway, I'm going to pop out the sound card so I can show you a couple other features on the motherboard here. The first thing I'll show you is the disk drive cable. Now, these things, like all PS2s, use proprietary disk drives. On a lot of other computers, you'll have a cable as well as a power. On the PS2, the data and the power is provided by one cable. You can't replace the disk drive in this unit with just any disk drive. You're going to need another PS2 disk drive. Now, scooting up this way, right there you have the processor. That is a 286 10 megahertz processor. The letters aren't very clear on it. Now, there's something right next to it that's kind of interesting. That is my Dallas real-time clock. Now, if you bought one of these, there's a pretty good possibility that you have a Dallas real-time clock with a dead battery in it. The interesting thing about these computers is that the real-time clock battery also holds all of the system configuration memory. So, if your Dallas real-time clock battery dies, your computer loses all of its settings. The RAM configuration, what kind of disk drives it has, what kind of hard drive it has. It really just won't work at all with a dead battery. So a lot of times when you get one of these, if it's got a dead battery, the first thing you're going to have to do is either try to find a Dallas real-time clock replacement, or you can do a modification like I did, which is I installed a regular, I believe 3-volt computer style battery. I got the socket from a spare motherboard that one of my friends had, and the chip basically has been modified to run this 3-volt battery so that I don't have to buy another new Dallas real-time clock anytime the battery dies. And also, nobody manufactures this particular real-time clock anymore that I know of, so if you buy a new one off of eBay, there's a good possibility it's been sitting in a parts bin for 15 years and you really have no idea whether or not your battery is going to die again. So I kind of suggest that you do this if you have a dead battery instead of buying another Dallas real-time clock that's 15 years old. But we'll move over here. There's a coprocessor slot. I don't have a coprocessor for this either. Over here is the hard drive interface cable. Just like my other PS2, if you want to put a hard drive in here, you're going to need to either find a factory IBM hard drive like I have in here. They're usually a little bit pricey, and they're also old, and they're also rare. I'm using this one because it came in one of my computers, but if I bought this and it didn't have a hard drive, I would have already set up one of the compact flash IDE hard drives, because I don't really see a point in spending a lot of money on a 20-year-old spinning hard drive that could pretty much fail on you at any given moment. Kind of like the 8086 model, again, there's no extra Molex power cables coming out of the power supply. So if you run a hard drive interface card and then plug a hard drive into this, you're going to have to splice a Molex power cable from somewhere on the motherboard. Alright, I'm going to install my sound card and close this thing back up so I can show it to you in action. Alright, I'm going to boot this thing up. I'll show you off to the right here. I have my Syquest EZflyer. So I have the internal 20 megabyte hard drive, but I also have this, which is an extra 230 megabytes of storage, which is extremely useful when you have a tiny hard drive like the one this one has. Now, you'll notice it takes it a minute to actually count the RAM up. Having it maxed out at 4 megabytes is probably a lot of memory for this thing back when it came out. Now it's finishing up the memory count. I want you to listen closely because the hard drive is extremely loud. Anyway, it's going to load up all the drivers for my external drive and the mouse driver. See the hard drive indicator light down there going. There's the Sound Blaster drivers. Now, I'm going to start up Windows 3.1 on this thing just so you can see how it runs. There's our nice VGA graphics. You can actually only run this in 2-color mode on the 8086 Model 25. There it is, your program manager. Let's go to the games. We've got our classic time waster here, Solitaire. I never really cared much for this game, but I know lots of people's parents played this in the 90s when they first got their home computers. Minesweeper, I'm sure we've all seen this. There we go. Let's not stress the processor out too much, right? Anyway, I'll close back out of Windows and have a look. I think I have a game or two on the external hard drive. Here we go. Let's go to Eye of the Beholder. Okay, this one has pretty cool graphics for this computer. I'm going to go with the built-in speaker because I don't have my speakers attached to my Sound Blaster card right now. Kinda epic. Now, if you haven't heard of this game, it's an old school role-playing game. It runs through this kind of animated intro. I know this might be lame if you're younger, but I remember watching this when I was a kid and I thought it was amazing, realistic graphics. Anyway, I think you get the point. Now, one thing I wanted to tell you is if you buy one of these things off of eBay and it comes up with a bunch of error messages, it's probably because that CMOS battery that I was talking about for the real-time clock is dead. If that's the case, you're going to need to go to, I believe Walsh Computing has a website, and they have the startup discs for the Model 25 on their website. You actually have to download a program and then create the disk from an image, but the computer won't run properly until you run that startup disk. And there's no point in running that startup disk until you have a battery, because it's not going to save any of the information that the startup disk configures on your computer if you don't have a battery. But I think I've pretty much covered the basics here. If you have any questions about the Model 25, 286, or the other Model 25, just let me know. I'll be sure to answer you.